Hello and welcome to this week's video, My Hero Academia. This week I'll be reviewing episode 1 of volume 3 of Vigilantes. Hooray! You know the rules and so do I. Let me know what you thought about it in the comment section down below and you will be right in next week's show. Whilst you're there, be sure to support your local small content creator today by doing all that YouTubey stuff that YouTube wants you to. Like, favourite, subscribe, do all that kind of stuff because it really does me a power of good. We are very close to breaking 95 subscribers. It would be really great if we could do that. It would be fantastic if we could break 100 by the end of the year, but between then and now we get into the review and we start out with the positives. And the headlines for this week is that this episode was everything that I have wanted from Vigilantes for a very, very long time. It ticks a hell of a lot of boxes, and you know what? I know that this episode might not be the be-all and end-all for everybody else, but for me, oh baby, it really worked wonders for me. I will admit that midway through the episode there is a major lore dump, but more on that later on, both in the positives and negatives of that particular sequence. I can't say that that lore dump necessarily would be leading to the negatives, but hey, we'll soon see about all that kind of stuff. We'll start off with the biggest revelation of all. I finally know what a senpai is! I want to know what a senpai is! I wanted them to tell me! And they did! It only took us 4 episodes to get there. This all just goes to show that I think they could have quite easily have done this far easier. It means an elder classman is what they translate it to in the margin of this particular thing, which basically just means the person in the year above them. Again, I don't see why they couldn't have said this earlier on, but hey-ho, diddly-do, I suppose now it is more relevant. In this episode, we are introduced to Mako to... you know what, I'm not even going to attempt to do that. The name's on the screen in case you don't know who they are, and how I should have pronounced it. Anyway, she is the sister of the occasionally relevant to the plot detective character who we saw a few episodes ago and sporadically in the main series. She's implied to be an older student by the line "hand that robs the cradle," though I'm fairly certain that line should be "hand that rocks the cradle," though hey-ho, I really don't know about these things, but whatever. What we learn about her is that she's writing a thesis, so of course she has to be an older student, probably in her 4th year or on a doctorate, either way. She's probably the most supportive person that Crawler has in his life right now, even if you can call her just telling him the answers to his upcoming quiz support, but hey. She's an interesting character. She has a sparky personality to her. She has a quirk which we will get into later when we talk about the negatives, as I think that is something that needs to be discussed. But what I really liked about this episode, beyond the introduction of this interesting new character, would be interesting to see how exactly she managed to make things work, is just the sheer mundanity of it. And I understand that might sound like damning with faint praise, but I've always been a sucker for slice of life stuff, especially slice of life stuff in wilder and more eccentric worlds. Like, I really liked episodes in My Hero Academia where it's just them having to deal with just regular school drama. You know, them struggling to learn for their exams. They've got doing the rehearsal stuff for the big school show. That kind of stuff I really do dig. I enjoy that kind of stuff. I will admit there is a part of me that he kind of enjoys it a little bit more so than the superhero punchy fighty stuff. But hey, that's all of discussion for a whole other time. So when we actually see Crawler there in class, learning as best as he can do, I really do like that. I love seeing that kind of slice of life stuff, as I've said again. And as I've said previously in past reviews, I've really wanted to see more about his university life and how he balances that with his part-time job and his life as a vigilante. It's a hard balance to make, let me tell you. I mean, Anyway, as I was saying, I really do like the idea of just delving into this stuff a lot more. And when I will admit that some people might find the idea of him balancing the vigilante stuff and the school stuff and the work stuff and this date that's effectively this date that he's going to go on with Makoto a little bit too trite and a little bit too silly and a little bit too cliched for their liking, but I really do like that kind of stuff. I think that it's an angle and a dynamism that this series has really been lacking. It adds a human element into this. I think it's really been needed, and I can say that as well for the main series itself. This is not to say that the main series is not without humanity. This is not to say that it does not have that deeper sense of connection that I as an individual can have with the characters and the media itself, or more broadly what the audience themselves can have, a connection between themselves and the media itself. But with that said, I feel that too often we've got lost in the, now we're going a level beyond, and the usual anime punchy shouty stuff to really give us those moments where just see our characters being. And all this stuff, whilst it might seem a little bit trite, they're effectively setting up for a love triangle thing coming up later on. I will admit that I do kind of like that, at least for the fact it gives us something that helps to differentiate itself from the main series, as well as simply the whole scenario of him having to balance everything. Again, it's silly, but I like it because it actually acknowledges the reality of the person that he is and what he has to deal with in his outside of hero work life. I know that's not the best way of putting it in English, but hey ho, I will admit, it's very early in the day for me. I've only just had my breakfast. I've got a bit of a headache coming on. I actually caught my finger in the mic stand, and we're in the middle of a heat wave. It's slowly getting warm because I've had to turn the air conditioner off, so forgive me if I go in a little bit of a different direction. With that said, getting back to the topic at hand, in this episode we learn about the history of quirks, or rather the history of the legality of quirk uses in regards to law enforcement and the legal definition of a hero and a vigilante. That is probably the title that you'll put on an essay or a thesis, but that's basically what we have here. And I know that I'm going to get into a discussion about the dynamics of it in the appropriate way it's delivered, but I will say I really did enjoy this purely and simply for the fact that when we have had these teases and deeper dives into the nature of quirks in the main series, I will admit that it feels like it cuts a little bit too close to the bone for me. I don't mean that in a personal sense, I don't mean that in a motive sense, but when it comes to quirks, they're one of those things that I think we should never learn exactly what they are or exactly how they work. But with that said, I do like learning about the legal side of it. I like learning about how this world has had to adapt to it. That's the kind of stuff that I want to see more of. And when it's stuff like this, when we are just getting a deep dive into the legalese of all of it, I prefer that a lot more so than learning that the term quirk come from some random person's grandmother in the middle of some random part of Japan. And I think that this is a far more interesting thing about it, into how it all develops. So of course with that other stuff you can excuse that as being an unreliable narrator. But with that said, I really did like this whole sequence of it. The big issue that I think, and the big debate that a lot of people are going to have with it, is was this really the best way to deliver this information? Because when we get down to it, when we just strip it all away, what we're getting here is just a huge block of text with very little in the way of visual flair. Now this may well change when we get to an anime further down the road, if indeed there is one, because as I mentioned in the past, I'm not entirely sure about that. And the debate will ultimately be, would it have been better to do this in a way that's a lot more visual? Would this better to do this in a way that is just more pure show? How would this be better to do this in a way for the audience to learn about it via discovery, or more gradually as the piece itself goes on? But at the same time, you can make the argument that this is the best way to condense this amount of information down, because it does it in a very efficient way. This really just boils down to maybe a page and a half in the actual manga itself. If we boil that down to an animation, it might be only about a minute and a half, if that. And can you really get more efficient than that? Of course, then you end up making the argument, what are you actually doing this for? Are you delivering it, is it better to be efficient, or is it better to be more dynamic when it comes to divulging information? That is a debate for you in the comment section down below if you want to go in that deep dive of things, but I think that for the here and now, it really works. For me, it's kind of, and I use this very tentatively, it's kind of like the bit in the first Terminator movie where Kyle Reese is given the exposition as what a Terminator is. They're in the police car and Sarah Connor's panicking. What the hell is that guy? What is his deal? And he explains, oh, that's a Terminator. They're a killing machine from the future. Da, 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 da. And it's delivered quickly in a scenario that feels natural to them because, you know, they're freaking out, they don't know what that is, so it works in that scenario. Or later on in that same movie where Reese is getting interrogated by the police and we get another bit of a lore dump, we get a little bit more of an explanation of how things work and how the Terminator and time travel works. And I think that in that kind of scenario it works. Here we get this exposition dump in the form of studying for an assignment. It's another way of developing exposition, though again I don't think it's maybe as visually dynamic as it really could be, but with that said, I think it does well for what it is, and I think that it delivers the information in a very efficient way. Again, should it have been delivered in an efficient way, or should it be developed in a more interesting way? That's a debate for you in the comments if you want to get that deep into it. Which one, of course, you end up finding better is ultimately down for personal preference. I think that it does as best as it can do, given the limitations of the medium. Like, yeah, in an anime, you could do this in a far more visually interesting and dynamic way, but when you've only got a handful of pages which to deliver this in a manga, you just kind of have to do what you can do. But with actually the content itself, I think that it really was just some really fantastic world building. Getting to know more about the history of this world in such fine detail is fantastic. The legal side of heroes and villains in worlds and stories like this are very rarely explained, unless it's in a scenario where that is the crux of a story, like the Civil War story arc in the Marvel comics and by extension the Marvel movies, for what that is worth. Beyond that, they never really get into the legality of it, and even now, after the fact, where some of that stuff has been made canon for the Marvel timeline, they still don't really reflect upon it. It doesn't seem to really mean much, even though it kind of still does mean much. And apart from that, we never really get these deep dives into the legality of it. Here we do get that. We understand where the nature of quirk licensing comes from. And it just comes from a random part of Rhode Island in the United States. And how it just became the de facto statement of legal... the legal precedent in which all hero legislation around the world would ultimately be based around. And I find that interesting. And I will take that far more so than some random person's grandmother coming up with the name of quirks, because at least with the legal side of things it makes more sense, because the law, and by extension some parts of politics, is based upon legal precedent. What's happened in the past will end up having an impact on cases going forward. So, naturally, when this whole licensing came up for this random part of Rhode Island in the United States, other people would refer to it both within the United States and beyond, so it makes sense of that and how that then proliferated down. There will be a part of me, of course, that does find this is kind of a little bit odd that they're going this deep down into a legal dive into the legality of hero work and the fact the laws for it doesn't come from Japan, but instead comes from the United States. But I think someone that works on Vigilantes is from America, so maybe it's like a nod to them. Maybe it's a case of, oh, this guy is from Rhode Island, so let's make a note to that. Wouldn't that be cute? And if that's the case, that's fine. But anyway, still, with all that said and done, I really did love the exposition dump. I know that I shouldn't do, and I do, it makes my teeth itch sometimes when it is done, but I think it was just done in such an efficient and interesting way that it's fine by me. Yes, it's a bit of a text dump, but what we are learning is still fascinating, and I really do love it. And even though it is this massive thing that kind of just changes your perspective of how this world works, it doesn't do it in such a way that it breaks the world. It adds to it rather than subtracts from it. Unlike certain other plot threads and ideas that happen in other series more recently. With that said and done, however, let us get into the negatives. There is, I think, a major negative with this, and it's one that I only think would be found if you're reading this particular volume. For people who don't know, who maybe just listen to these reviews because they like my stuff or whatever, with these particular volumes you get the episode itself, and that's how they're referred to, and they're referred to as episodes. Then immediately after that you get like a behind the scenes little shot. You get a sketch, some concept sketches of a character, and a little bit of information about the character and the design process of coming up with them. And as well as do all that, it just gives a little bio of the character, their name, their age, whereabouts they're from, their favourite thing, and also their power if they have a power. And it reveals the power of Makoto, the new character we get introduced in this episode. And it feels like the kind of thing that should be a massive reveal down the road. Like in 2 or 3 episodes' time, we're going to learn, oh wow, she has that power. Oh god, that changes everything. But because of the way that this volume is delivered, we don't get that. We have that revealed to us here and now. So whatever dramatic significance that may or may not have has now been thwarted. So either we'll go forward and there'll be a reveal in 3 or 4 episodes' time where, oh my goodness, she has that power, or it just won't be done at all. It'll make me incredibly paranoid going through it. I do think that they'll eventually end up being relevant to the plot going forward, because quite frankly, you know, it should be, but the fact it's revealed here and now is really stupid. Like, again, it's cute that they do these behind the scenes stuff, and this wouldn't have been a factor in the actual original release. At least I don't think it would have, and I hope it wouldn't have. But for here and now, here I am thinking it, reading through it and thinking to myself, oh, well, I really love reading Vigilantes. There's only really been one thing that's been spoilt for me, and hey, I don't really know the full context of that, so it might as well not be spoilt for me at all. Oh, wow, I'm really enjoying myself. Oh, look at that. The manga itself has spoilt it. I can't escape. Everywhere I go are spoilers for this fucking series. It's not fair. Anyway, with all that said and done, let us get into some... Actually, no, we have to get into the overview, don't we? Sorry, anyway, as we get into the overview, I have to say that I really did like this episode quite a lot. This does everything that I really hoped that it would have done. It is everything I've been wanting for this series for quite a long time. We get a nice, lovely deep dive into the nature of this world with some fantastic world building. Again, debate as to whether or not it should have been delivered like that, but for me, it's fine for the here and now. It will be interesting to see how they do that in an anime if there is one. But from this, it really just set up for some fantastic stuff going forward. Well, that said and done, however, let's get into Comment Corner! Now it's time for Comment Corner, and here comes Big X1 with their weekly comment, who says, Holt's Variety Pack is our senpai. Aww. To be fair though, I'm still not entirely sure whether senpai really means older class person or elder class person, or however they define it in the volume. So God only knows what it really means, but still, thank you, I think. And hey, at least I kind of have an understanding now what it means. So at least now when people make that reference, I get an idea of what that means. Anyway, thank you for your comment. If you want to leave a comment, do so in the comment section down below. Let me know what you thought about this week's episode. Whilst you're there, do all the YouTubey stuff that YouTube wants to do. Thank you all for listening, and see you next time. Goodbye! Thanks for watching. Be sure to like, favourite, subscribe, click the bell, and do all the YouTubey stuff that YouTube wants you to do. Go on, it'll do me a power of good. Until next time, my friends, goodbye!